Okay, so where digital marketing is headed, we can't ignore COVID. For better or worse, it's changed our marketplace and our culture. And in many ways, it's sped up a lot of the things that we were already experiencing. And in particular, there's two things that happened during COVID that I want to talk about that have really impacted the digital marketing landscape. I want to focus on those and talk about how those changed the industry and how you can take advantage of it or pitfalls that you need to look out for. Okay, so those two things are the lockdowns and the social distancing, right? Those created a perfect storm for digital acceleration. Okay, so let's look at both of those. Let's start with the lockdown. So lockdown really changed the way that we as a society were behaving. People were stuck at home. This caused them to try new methods compared to things that the way they've always done things. So here's some changes in behavior that we saw. So number one, there's a higher demand for digital shopping, right? People who would never buy anything online are now using DoorDash or buying groceries online, right? Digital shopping and trust in digital shopping has really, really grown. So we were already on this trend where people were moving to digital shopping and curbside delivery or home grocery delivery, or Amazon has been growing year over year. The lockdown accelerated that trend because now we were forced into it, right? So this is a trend that is likely to stick around because we were already on that trajectory. So that's number one. Number two here is that we have a higher demand for digital content. Being stuck at home means consuming content at home, right? And what was really interesting to me is that if you look at the budgets of Americans over the course of the lockdown, all of their entertainment numbers went down except for in-home entertainment budgets actually increased, right? So they're paying more for things like Netflix, Disney Plus, YouTube Plus, which is an important one to note, right? Especially with the younger generations, YouTube is replacing what we would have watched cable 10, 20 years ago, right? YouTube is kind of taking that spot. So it's really interesting that demand for digital content is really, really up. And I've got some stats here. Over the course of the pandemic, so since 2019, YouTube has reported a 500% increase in views. Since the pandemic started, a 500% increase in views. And also saw usage grow from 73% of adults in the US to 81% of adults in the US. So not only are views increasing, but viewers are increasing. So even if you're not using YouTube, what that means is that your audience is getting used to seeing great content on their phone and on their laptop, right? Which means the audience are holding content companies to a higher standard. They're not just wanting content, they're wanting content from great people, something that's entertaining, something that's hyper-personalized. They're really wanting their digital content creators to be more than just content factories. They're holding them to higher standards. Okay, the lockdown also had, there are the three things: stand for something, be entertaining, be hyper-personalized. Lockdown also had a huge switch to remote work, right? So this forced large companies and normal people to adopt technology that they normally wouldn't have. So Zoom, Skype, microphones, like how many of your friends now have that you never would have thought now have microphones and cameras on their computers because they're attending Zoom meetings, right? Or they've got the cameras, the ring lights, right? So that they look better on their camera. This is a trend, again, we were going down, but the lockdown has accelerated this. It also, if you think about it this way, has caused the home to become a multifunctional hub. Not as much now, but if you think back 2 or 3 months ago, the home was serving as school, as living space, as work, as the social hub. Like the home became multifunctional, and a lot of that might go back to normal, but a lot of it is staying the same too. So the way we view the home and the way we work the way we work and the way we consume content, shifting, and where we consume it, shifting as well. Okay, so the bottom line of the lockdown here, we've accelerated the move towards digital shopping, content consumption, and remote work. Okay, so we were already going there, but now we took like what would have taken us 5-10 years to get there, we did in like a year. Like we just skipped all the middle stuff, right? All those early adopters are now just normal people. Okay, so let's look at the second part of our perfect storm, which is the social distancing. So social distancing accelerated a lot of these changes, and the changes, and I'm really focusing not just on society, but on corporate America, because remote work is going to be more permanent. And what's important to note about that is that it's going to be more permanent, not necessarily because corporate America is wanting it to be permanent. It's permanent because people experienced it, liked it, and now they're either demanding that their employers do it, or they're quitting and starting their own businesses or becoming freelancers. What does that mean for you? It means increased competition. The marketplace is getting more crowded as people don't want to go back to the office place, and as corporate America doesn't want to cater to them, which is why you're seeing some companies are catering in big ways because they're risking losing a lot of their workforce. So we're going to see remote work become more permanent, more of a common thing, right? We're also seeing an increase in digital literacy. So because of social distancing, remote work was prolonged far past what anyone expected. So yes, things like Zoom and Skype and conference and communication tools are all now commonplace, but we're also seeing a surge in digital currency, AI, automation tools, things that aren't as mainstream are now really gaining steam, right? So think about digital currency before the pandemic. It was something that was growing and was there, but now it seems to be everywhere, right? And blockchain, right? Everywhere. AI was something that was like an idea. Today, AI is something that is very feasible for most companies. And automation tools are becoming more mainstream, more accepted. So it's just interesting to note that the lockdown increased the timeline there, right? Technology in those fields has been advanced and adopted more quickly than in any other time in history. Like this was just a crunch time for us because we were forced to work differently. And bear in mind that this is society as a whole, right? How many churches now were forced into the technology age? Like how many churches are now streaming their services, right? How many schools were forced into digital learning models? I don't know if my kids are ever going to have a snow day again because, well, they will because they've got like 3 or 5 snow days built in, but then after that, it's digital learning, right? Like school's been altered forever. Okay, so we're seeing these changes in our social structure in the digital realm. The question is, what does this mean for you and your business? And I like to picture this guy. What does it mean? I don't know. He just looks real confused. Anyways, so let's discuss the impacts of these changes, how it's going to affect your business. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is that we're seeing a deep and permanent change in buyer behavior. So searches, the types of searches, all of our typical consumer patterns are being disrupted, right? So in other words, how a client finds you and wants to interact with you, shifting. SEO and branding are no longer nice to haves. In order to survive long term, you're going to need to really invest heavily in those. And if you think about it this way, you know, we were already kind of getting to this point, but a year ago, if you didn't really focus on SEO, no big deal. But now with such a crowded marketplace, if you want to stand out and be found organically, you're going to have to start leaning into SEO. If you want to stand out from all this competition, you're going to have to start really investing in your branding and really understanding what you stand for. Values now are at the forefront of our expectations. Clients expect more transparency. They want to know what you stand for. They want conversations around ROI, of course, but they also want to know what is the deeper connection with your brand. Another trend that we should have mentioned is that client loyalty is diminishing, it's shrinking. And the only way to bolster your retention will be through building relationships through shared values, right? So relationships really important. Shared values, very, very important. Suzanne, did you say something? Okay, I thought you said something. Okay, next thing is that content is at the forefront of most searches and interactions. So now that almost everything we're doing is online, clients are expecting to find information up front before talking to anyone, before talking to you, before talking to a rep, before getting on a phone call. They expect to see content. So investing in content, and in particular video content, will be paramount to making sure you're at the top of the search engine when your client wants you. And video content is because if they're doing research, video, well, we're going to get more into video content in a little bit, but it's it's a good mix of all content is important, but video content in particular is a smart idea. Okay, so that was the first one. Behavior, buyer behavior is changing. Second one is more competition, right? So we already said it, more freelancers and more inexperienced entrepreneurs. All of us have probably seen the increased competition. This is going to be extremely challenging because as the bar to set a business is actually really low, which is good. It's how we get into the industry. But the bar to entry is low. The bar to clients that are happy in a business that is thriving is fairly high. So there's a big disconnect between I started a business and I've got a lot of happy customers. What am I getting at? What does that mean? That means that there's going to be a lot more churn and burn clients. There's going to be a lot more distrust in the marketplace. It's going to be more and more common and more difficult when you get on the phone with a client that they are likely to have been burned by somebody else in the past, right? So that's what I just said. More people have been burned by prospects or a bad provider. So that's going to make building trust more important, sales harder. And then the other thing about that is that in a crowded marketplace, you're going to have a harder time standing out from the crowd. 1 second. So all of these newbie marketers are jumping on the same bandwagon as you and me. They're going to be using the same tactics. They're going to be saying some of the same things, which is going to beg the question, how do you stand out in an ever increasingly more crowded marketplace? We'll talk more about that in a minute. So to sum all that up, this whole portion up here, you're gonna have a harder time standing out because of competition, as well as battling jaded prospects because of they've been burned by a newbie or bad provider. Okay. So this next one is related to that, and that is that there's less workforce right now. So especially in the US, but it's not just here. There's a labor shortage, but I'm going to argue that it's actually not a labor shortage. It's a labor shortage for bad work. Staff would rather freelance or do their own thing rather than work for a bad employer. We're having a switch from being a work-focused society to being a life-focused society. It's a great shift. It's something that personally I've been fighting for, but it's causing some problems too, some changes, some growing pains. Maybe that's a better way of saying it, right? Some growing pains here, and that is labor shortage. The workforce is so desperate for labor, to get a job right now. If you want to go get a job, the marketplace is so desperate that people are literally, I've heard stories of people that are like, they don't get the time off or vacation time they want, so they quit their job, go on their vacation, and then come back and get a new job because they're hiring everywhere right now. Yeah, Suzanne's saying she's seen that too. Like right now, there's a shortage of people willing to do bad work. Notice that we're talking about bad work, right? Employees are no longer held in place by money. So I find this really interesting. There's a gas station near my house with a sign on the door. It's been there for months, offering $22 an hour for their hourly employees. So the person standing at the checkout at the gas station is making, that used to be a career, right? Like the cost of labor is rising because of the labor shortage. And that is also causing an increase in outsourcing to VAs and agencies, which is good because that means that we're seeing better VAs, better outsourcing agencies overseas. That keeps costs down, but they're not so great for complex or strategic level activities. And you also run a risk, as Mark has found out recently, that you're going to see maybe some people that aren't working exactly the way you want them to work. So I want to go. Say that again.
to put it mildly.
Yeah, to put it mildly. To go back 2 points there, I want to point out the bad work portion. Money is not keeping people here anymore. So if you need to hire somebody or you have staff, now we got to start asking ourselves, it's money plus. I mean, it's been that way for a while, but now is for sure money plus. What is it that keeps them there? What is your vision? What is your support structure, right? How do you attract and retain talent?
I was just going to say, Craig, for the plus, I think it's almost like learning their love language. Do they like gifts? Do they like words of affirmation?
Yeah.
Like what makes them happy, right? It makes them feel appreciated.
Totally. It's about helping them feel fulfilled in whatever their goal in their life is, right? If they don't feel like they're making progression towards it, you're going to lose them. Because they can go to the gas station and get a $22 per hour job, right? Okay, awesome. Okay, the fourth one here, clients are interacting differently, right? So we've kind of talked about this already, but they're more comfortable with video conferencing and web call tools. Some even prefer it. So think about like your sales calls now. Maybe are you using those tools now that everyone's really comfortable with them? Online management tools such as Slack are more commonplace and more accepted. So what used to be just like you'd get a client and you'd have to train them on this stuff, they might already know now. Now it's not as big of a hurdle because digital literacy has grown so much. Number 5, there's been an acceleration of technology. Okay, so during COVID, companies and people took advantage of this digital boom to invest in and improve a lot of technologies. And in particular, things that we mentioned, but I want to go a little bit deeper on: chatbots, AI, team management, automations. All of these things had an increased demand over the last year and a half. And so they have all improved drastically. So this presents you with an opportunity to leverage these new tools, integrating them into your business, and that may help you work faster and more cost effectively. So we're going to talk in a later session about how to use AI and chat bots and all that stuff in your business. Right now, I just want to say, hey, this stuff has gotten a lot better. Like if we were having this conversation a year and a half ago, we'd be saying, oh, they're cool, but they're not quite there yet. Now we're looking at them, we're saying, man, they are good and you can use them. And these bots are fooling, they're passing like the Turing test, right? Like it's hard to tell if that was a bot or if it was you. Okay, the next thing, brand loyalty is down. Number 6 here, brand loyalty is down. So the big picture here is that COVID disruption has seen people switching to new brands and new providers. And the best way that I could think to illustrate this is to use a big box store. And let's look at Walmart, right? So traditionally, stores like Walmart, they put a lot of effort into trying to get people who have just moved, right? If you move, you'll probably get letters in the mail from like Target, Walmart, the local grocery store, all trying to get you to come shop at their store first, because they know that if you start shopping at that store, you are likely to shop there for the rest of the time you live in that home. Like they literally capture you for life if they can get you first, because shopping is such a habitual thing. And I actually, looking at this picture of this girl at Walmart, I looked at that picture. This is from their store. And maybe it's because I was in like the marketing mode and I was thinking about this, but I was like, man, that picture of that girl feels like hometown. That feels like that could have been taken at my store. And Walmart has done such a great job, even though, I've got a lot to say about Walmart, but they've done a great job about making it feel so familiar no matter where you go in order to capture and retain you for life, pretty much is what we're getting at, right? But over the past year, there's been a huge surge in digital shopping, right? Because of the lockdown, because of social distancing, huge surge now in digital shopping. And Walmart was already built to take advantage of this, okay? So at the beginning of the pandemic, they had 40% of the grocery market, 40% of the grocery market. We're talking US market, but 40% of the grocery market. And look at this. They've got curbside delivery. They've got shopping for you. They had shipping to your home. Like, they were built before the pandemic to really take advantage of this situation. Yet, despite that, during the pandemic, their market share has dropped from 41% to 30%. Now, that's only 9%. So like, we can look at that and be like, oh, it's only 9%. But when you're talking about Walmart and market share, you're talking to now owning 30% of the grocery store market share. They are now tied neck and neck with Walmart. And think about this too. Instacart only functions in large cities. They're only in like LA, New York, Chicago. Walmart is in all communities, all rural communities everywhere, right? And despite owning rural America, they are now tied neck and neck with Instacart. Amazon and Target also have eaten into their market share a little bit. They have grown, but not nearly as much as Instacart. Instacart really just took off. So the question that we have to ask ourselves here is why? And the answer is that the effects of the pandemic are as big and as transformative as a major life event. It is huge disruption. It is as though everyone in the world moved home. They moved somewhere else, and all of their patterns, all of their habits, everything was shaken up, right? And so there's three takeaways that I think we can take from this, right? Because everyone now is in flux. The marketplace is in a state of flux. And there's, even though we're not Walmart or a grocery store, there's three takeaways that we can learn from this. Number one, people are switching brands and trying new providers, okay? Which means you need to focus more on retention and keeping your clients in your world, right? Because just as their clients are in flux, your clients are also in flux. See, I think it's important to understand that we don't live one-dimensional life. So if they're in flux and willing to try new brands in terms of like Walmart versus Target versus Instacart, that means they're in flux in all aspects of their life. They're in flux with what they're doing for their work. They're in flux with, you know, that's why people are quitting and starting their own thing, right? That they're in flux with their providers that they're working with. So your clients are in flux. You need to make sure you're focusing on retention. Number two, you've got the opportunity now to go shake the trees and get people to jump ship from your competitors and come to you. If they're not focused on retention, they might jump ship and come to you. And then number three, you also have the opportunity to snag new clients who normally would not purchase from you, or maybe who have said no in the past couple of years. Their lives have changed. So people who normally have said no or have previously said no might now be in a position to say yes. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so those are our 6 major impacts we're seeing in the marketplace right now. There's a lot of changes here, you know, so changing buyer behavior, more competition, less workforce, clients are interacting differently, and acceleration of technology, brand loyalty is down. As we come out of the pandemic, we have to ask ourselves, what is going to swing the other way, right? It's like a pendulum. We swing really extreme towards that digital side. And a lot of it was already on track to get there, but not all of it was. So what's going to swing back? And there's a real thing that the World Health Organization is tracking, and it's called pandemic fatigue. This is a real thing. Yeah, Suzanne's already shaking her head. She knows. She's got it. Pandemic fatigue. And basically, people are tired of talking about the pandemic. They're tired of the restrictions of the pandemic. They're tired of the isolation caused by the pandemic. And so the World Health Organization, and by the way, also all, if you're in the US, all state governments and all federal governments are trying to indoctrinate you to not be tired of the pandemic. But this is human nature. We're tired of it, right? And really this illustrates that the marketplace is craving face-to-face interaction. Okay, lockdown and social fatigue are real, and there's a place and a need for face-to-face interaction. So that probably means that live trade shows, conferences, events, they're going to be making a comeback. Yeah, and a lot of them already are. Yeah, Suzanne's clapping. A lot of them already are. If you look at the handsome guy in that picture, That's a live event that took place just a couple months ago, right? People are already pushing for these live events. So what's gonna swing back? I don't know exactly how live events are gonna look, but my prediction is that they are going to swing back almost exactly the same. Like the events, the conferences are going to be functioning a lot like they did before. They might have a digital component, but it's not going to be a, hey, come digitally or come in person. It's going to be come in person or get a digital replay. They're going to really be pushing for those live events. That's where they make the most money. And that's also what the marketplace wants. So we're going to see a big swing back on that point. But all that other stuff we talked about is probably permanent. Okay, so let's put some things into focus and say, okay, now we've got all this information about how the marketplace looks. How do we take this and apply it to our business moving into 2022? And I've got 6 recommendations that you should be looking at as you plan the next year, but even like the next 5-10 years, right? These are trends that I want you to look at. So first of all, your client niche. Niching is nothing new. You've heard it a million times, so have I, but it's something that almost everybody does really, really poorly. Niching down is one of those things, it's the first thing out of a marketer's mouth, but it's the last thing that anyone ever does. So moving into 2022, we can't afford to do a poor job at claiming and talking to your niche. We can't. The marketplace is getting too crowded, right? And so there's 2 things in particular I want you to pay attention to. One, you need to be talking to a specific audience and you need to be speaking their language. Research. Research is one of those words where we think big companies do it. Guess what? This is a problem for all mid-tier companies and lower. They think that they can't afford to do this. This is something you can do on a yearly basis. We've talked about it, right? Things like the focus few analysis, real-time market research, all things that we've talked about that are going to help you speak the same language and engage in conversation with your ideal clients and understand who they are better, right? So research and extreme focus is a must. And then number 2, SEO and your marketing messages need to be focused on your target market. It's no longer a nice to have. You need to research and then arm your marketing with the right language and the right messaging to attract the right people. To stand out from the crowd, this is a must do. Okay, number 2, things to focus on in 2022, relationship marketing. And I'm not talking about the spammy MLM approach of marketing, right? Where like you're leveraging your friends and your friends of your friends to get sales. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that your marketing should be focused on creating real conversations and building real relationships. The days of connect and spam are over. So instead, we need to build real relationships, have real conversations. I've said this before, I'll say it again, authentic conversations drive sales. That's worth saying again slowly. Authentic conversations drive sales. So investing in relationships is always going to pay dividends. They're going to help you make sales. They'll help you build a fan base. It's going to help you retain clients. Like it makes your whole life better, right? And then with relationship marketing, the way you want to approach this is you want to leverage value, adding value to their life as the catalyst for a sales conversation, right? So we'll talk more about adding value in a second, but the big takeaway here is that you can talk about sales quickly if you add value quickly, right? Drive the sales conversation by first adding value and then using that as your foot in the door to talk about finding a solution for their needs. I had a coach that had an example of this where he would say, if someone was hanging off the side of a cliff and you walked by and you had a rope, you don't have to, build your no like trust factor. You can just say, hey, I've got a rope. You want to buy it? Because they're on the edge of the cliff. They want the rope and you're going to do more service to them throwing the rope than being like, hey, how you doing? What's up? So like, hey, how you doing down there? What's your hobbies? Right? Like add value first, hey, I've got a strong rope. You want me to throw it down to you? It's $20. Yes, please. I got $20. Let's do it. Or $2,000 or whatever it is, right? Add value first, use that as a catalyst for the conversation. Okay, number 3, double down on video content. And not just any video content, but video content that resonates with your audience. So the video, it's really important to understand that video consumption remains a strong contender compared to other types of content. But a good mix is still important. Like, don't go all in on video content and ignore audio or written or visual. And when I say visual, I mean like memes and photos and things like that, like visual branding, right? Because content is technically visual too, or I'm sorry, written content. Don't ignore them. Like, if you're on LinkedIn and all you do is videos, that's fine, but you're going to be missing out on part of your audience if you don't throw in a mix of some of it. So video consumption is up, but if you want your videos to be effective, you have to have both value and values. See that pun there? Okay, so in other words, the values you stand for must come through. That's the values portion. And the value you provide for your clients must also come through. So what you stand for versus what you're giving, right? Those are the two things there. And for content to be valuable to your client, it needs to entertain, inspire, or educate. And this is part of the value equation. And the second half of the value equation is created in taking action. Nothing happens till they take action. So your content should entertain, inspire, or educate while also pointing them towards taking steps or taking action, right? It's not entertainment for entertainment's sake. That would work if you were an entertainment company and your goal is to get them to sit on the couch and watch more. Then entertainment for entertainment's sake is great. Entertainment to move them towards action, that's what you want. Inspiration to move them towards action, that's what you want. Education to move them towards, you get the point, right? That's what you want. Awesome. And then finally, with video, you got to understand we need a mix also of short and long videos. So when I say short videos, think 5 to 60 seconds. Yes, 5 seconds to 60 seconds. Short videos. Social sites like TikTok are pushing the bar for micro content. And so attention spans are getting shorter. So now short videos, yes, 5 to 60 seconds. We want to use those as hooks to grab people. We're entertaining for a second. We're inspirational for a second. And that gets their attention. They say, whoa, what's going on here? And then we want long form videos, think 10 minutes to 60 minutes. That's for the education. That's for the engagement. That's for the conversion, right? So let me give you an example. Every time I do a podcast episode, Jason creates a short clip video for me to use as promotion. There's the attention. And then once the attention is gotten, they go to the long form, 20-minute, 30-minute episode and consume the whole thing. So short videos to get attention. And we're talking 5 seconds to 60 seconds. Max for what I would call a short video would be like 2 minutes, right? Like really, really short. And then long form videos are for engagement and conversion and education. Does that make sense? Yeah, we're good? Okay. Number 4 thing that you should focus on as we move into 2022. So retention marketing. Okay, so your business model has to be built for retention. We've been talking about this for a long time, but it's more important now than ever, right? And so you've heard me say this before, but you should aim for 30% retention as a minimum. But the higher you can get that number, the healthier your business gets. And growth becomes easy when retention is high. And if you can think about it this year, if year over year, you're retaining 90% of your clients, right? So you get 100 clients, 90 of them stick around. That first year, you had to get 100 clients. The next year, you got to get 10, right? To be at the same level. And if you get 100 more, then you've doubled your business, right? Like retention really, really makes your business super healthy, super easy. And here's the thing, that as acquisition becomes more and more expensive, retention becomes more and more important. So as labor is more expensive, as attention is more expensive, what did I just say? Attention, yeah, not retention. Attention becomes more expensive. Retention becomes the solution that helps you afford to keep growing. And this point is so important. I put it on its own slide just to kind of drive it home. Retention is as important as, if not more important than sales. It really, really is. We put a lot of emphasis on sales because that's where it all starts. But if you don't retain, it's like being on a hamster wheel, or the example that I've been putting lately is an escalator, right? Every time you make a sale, you take a step up the escalator. Every time you lose a client, that escalator moves down. If your retention rate is 0, so you're losing clients as fast as you make them, you're just stuck in one spot, right? You're not really moving forward. And that's the equivalent of hustle, 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 but never really getting anywhere, right? Versus if you take 4 steps up for every 1 step back, now you're really cooking, right? And if you're taking 9 steps up for every 1 step back, well, then you're going to beat that escalator. You're going to be off of it in no time, right? So retention is as important as, if not more important than sales. And the key here is that we want to build it into your business, not just have it be something that's nice. It's like, it's part of your service delivery, right? We start thinking about it as part of your service delivery. Number 5, team building. Okay, team building is the third key to growing a business. The first 2, we just talked about sales and retention. The third is team building. Team is how you remove yourself as the bottleneck. So all of us should be focused on hiring people to do the work for us and truly move into that role of CEO. And 2 major points here that I want to point out. Team building is now more than just money, right? We just talked about that. So you can't buy your way into loyalty, though it helps. You can't buy your way into loyalty, though it helps. And without the money portion, you have to be competitive. Without it, the other stuff doesn't matter. So the money is still important, but it's more than just money. We have to really leverage your vision and help your staff to feel fulfilled, right? It's more important than ever that they feel fulfilled, which we already talked about, so I'm not going to belabor that point. And then also AI, automation tools, and team management software now are ways to lessen the stress of your team. And so what I'm getting at here is view these tools as team building, right? This is how you get stuff done more quickly, more easily, right? Is by investing in AI, automation, and team management software. And for those tools to work effectively, you got to work them into your process. So if you try to buy a tool to solve a problem that you haven't solved yet, it's not going to work. You have to use a tool to implement a solution that you've already come up with. Okay, so like if you're trying to buy AI that writes content, if you think you're going to buy this AI and it's going to write all your content for you, you're going to be really frustrated. But if you've got patterns and processes, and this is how I write content, and the AI simply does your strategy, guess what? You just took like a 6-hour content writing process and turned it into like a 30-minute process. Now either you can do that or a team member can do that in 30 minutes, right? So use these tools to implement solutions you've already come up with. It makes your job easier and makes staff more affordable. Okay, and then the last thing is leverage in-person events whenever possible. So this one is, you know, I should have put like a little star because it's almost like optional. I want to say whenever possible, because not everyone here wants to, it's not part of everybody's plan. The reason it's on this list though, is because the people that are attending this event, they're going to be attending this event to fulfill a personal and professional need for connection. And so they are going to be more open and more emotionally invested when they attend these events in the near future. So if you're there, it's going to be a great place. It's going to be, you know, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, right? Where's the barrel? It's live events, right? This is the barrel. So go there if you can. But here is the caveat: watch your audience carefully. The barrel's there, but if there's no fish in it, it doesn't matter, right? So if your audience isn't going to these events, then you don't need to go either. But if your audience is going to events, go, because this is going to be a big deal over the next probably 2 years, right? Like this until it becomes like, oh, we're finally back. I bet you for the next 2 years, every conference are going to be like, oh, I'm so glad we're live, right? They're going to be talking about it. Okay, cool. So now we know what we need to do. We know why we're doing it. We're seeing the trends. How do we stand out as competition becomes more and more fierce? I just saw that there were comments, so I was just checking in on those. Yeah. Okay. So Jason's, yeah. Okay. So Zan says, go to Europe for a month if you've got the COVID fatigue. Jason's saying, just got an email this morning that even Spotify is launching video versions of podcasts. Yeah. And Mark's saying Snapchat chat is sweet spot for ads. Oh, Snapchat sweet spot for ads is 2 to 5 seconds. Yep. 2 to 5 seconds. You know, I always laugh whenever I watch YouTube or something and an ad starts and you never see the logo in the first like 10 seconds, because then I skip the ad and I don't know whose ad it was. You know, so like think about building those ads in 2 seconds. It's like, here's the logo, here's the thing. See ya. You know, it's like, that's it. Okay, awesome. How do we stand out as competition becomes more fierce? And the answer is there's 2 keys here. The first is your vision and your voice, right? So what's the phrase we say all the time? Be aggressively you. That really stands out here. And then number 2, consciously choose to be different. So your competition is doing the same thing as you, and increasingly more people are doing it. So you have to choose the places where you stand out and are different, right? It's this is a funny thing. I think I might have had this conversation with Jason actually, but we were talking about how human nature is to not stand out. Like we spend our entire childhood trying to blend in, like not be seen, not stand out, not cause waves. It's human nature to feel safe by being like everybody else, but it's the person that is different that stands out easily. So you have to consciously choose, where do I differentiate myself? Okay, you're going to Facebook. Everyone else is on Facebook. How do you do that differently? Right? You're sending messages. Everyone else is sending messages. How do I do that differently? You're going to conferences. Everyone else is going to conferences. How do you do it differently? Right? Like ask yourself, how do I stand out? And maybe it's just you wear a bright pink t-shirt to the conference. Okay, perfect. People will be like, hey, did you see that guy in the bright pink t-shirt? Yeah, I did. It's Craig. He's awesome. Go meet him. Right? Like you got to be consciously different here. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this session with some long-term trends to watch, but not necessarily to act on yet. So there's some, what was 10 years in the future a year ago is now like 5 years in the future, right? Because of this consolidation that we've had. So some things to watch that are really starting to gain steam here. Virtual reality and augmented reality. This has been a hot topic for about 5 years. And the big issue with virtual and augmented reality is the cost of the glasses. And there are several companies that are on the verge of making really cheap, really good VR, AR glasses. And once those hit the marketplace, the opportunity, I mean, they do everything a computer does. So if we stop using monitors and start using virtual environments, you could start interacting with your clients or recording videos that are like 3D videos, right? Like there's a lot of opportunity there. And once it starts to move, it's going to move quickly. That's a wave that maybe you want to ride. Maybe not, but maybe you do. Cryptocurrency. And perhaps now is the time to move for some of us, if you're comfortable with it. Cryptocurrency was a nice thing a while ago. It is becoming more and more of a thing. Right now, you would still be a quote-unquote early adopter, but it's also still a trend. It's still a fad. So which way is it going to go? You know, analysts are saying that it's going to be a big thing. So I'm putting this in the in the keep watching pile, maybe not act on it yet, but some of you might be more comfortable with it than me. Smart speakers, Alexa, Google, right? They're becoming more and more common. This is another one that could be now's the time to act. It's still early. So this is becoming more and more common that they're in the house, but it's still early adopters who are really using them to their full potential. They're still expensive to operate them. But like, think about, if you're running a podcast or you're marketing and you rip the audio and you put it onto the smart speaker so people can listen through their Alexa, as that becomes more and more of a thing, you could be on the front of that wave as well. Email alternatives. So email has been trending downward. It's still the best bang for your buck, and I'm not knocking email. What I am saying is that we need to be on the lookout for what's going to take email's spot. It's been the king for a long time. It might stay the king for a while. But as attention spans get shorter, so I had stats on these and I didn't write them down, but the stats are like something like checking email is down by like 70%, and the number of people using email is down too. So it's big numbers that email use has gone down, but nothing has replaced it yet. So just keep your eye out for that. Okay, so that's the presentation for this morning. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.